Hello everyone, this is Fantasy-esque and welcome back to the Fairy Amazon Challenge in The Sims 4. We are following the reign of Queen Supriya Reed Daisy, who has recently celebrated the birthday of Princess Jadis. And now that the court knows exactly what each princess represents, the fairies have begun taking sides. And none have more at stake than the Night Embers. Lady Katerina has been a faithful counselor to Queen Supriya for many seasons, but she finds herself being unable to agree with Lynette's position as heir. So much planning and luck has gone into her daughter Vivian being married to a prince, boosting her influence and potential in court. But this victory might be short-lived if Lynette takes power. Her relations with Vivian and Titania are in tatters, with both fated for reckonings under her rule. In a time such as this, Katerina has only one hope: to use her position as counselor to call a reckoning on Crown Princess Lynette, eliminating her from the court and making Princess Jadis the new heir to the throne. Okay, the Night Ember family is having a very rough discussion right now, but I thought we'd quickly jump in to take a look at the calendar so we can kind of see the timeline we have to work with. Now, all of this obviously came about because Princess Jadis had her birthday, and then I noticed that with Katerina, in terms of her relationships, she has a negative relationship with Lynette. It's like in the red, just a little bit, but still it's in the red, which means that if this kind of develops into enemyship, Katerina is gonna call a reckoning on the Crown Princess. Like, as counselor, she has this power right now, she has this ability, but this is gonna be pretty much the one and only chance she gets to eliminate Lynette, take her out of the equation, and make Jadis the new heir, right? Katerina pretty much has the power right now. So what kind of timeline exactly does she have to work with? Well, this episode, I might focus in on just the drama of the court and what's happening with everyone. We do have the Royal Forage quest coming up, which is a good chance for someone to gain an extra influence, so that might be in the next episode. The episode after, we will have Tinka and Sycorax's birthday, and then in the episode after that, probably around episode 45, the queen is going to hand over her crown to the new queen. So Katerina doesn't have very long. She literally has 4, maybe 5 days to put that into effect and to eliminate Lynette. Because if she doesn't manage to hold a reckoning for Lynette before Lynette gets the crown, then her daughters are essentially screwed. Her entire family is screwed. Lynette has a very, very bad relationship with both of them. She's already enemies with Titania. She's also enemies with her sister Jadis. Thankfully, Jadis is kind of in the clear. She's not actually going to be affected by a reckoning, even if Lynette becomes queen, because as soon as Lynette becomes queen, Jadis automatically joins the luxury class as a spare, so she's going to be outside the main court, and reckonings only occur within the main court. So the one who's going to be targeted is obviously going to be Titania. She's going to have an automatic reckoning held against her as soon as Lynette becomes queen. And not only that, Vivian's relationship is so bad with Lynette that she's kind of headed in the same direction. So this is the one and only chance that Katerina has to save her family from the disaster that might occur. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to go. Her relationship right now with her daughters have also become a little bit strained, because I think Katerina is so stressed and so angry at her family's situation. She's not angry at her daughters. She's always loved them a lot. But she's so angry at the situation, at the unfairness of, them having everything work out for them except for this one relationship that is going to cost them everything. She's kind of lashing out. But this was a family meeting. They were trying to plan what exactly is to be done. And I think Katerina was sharing her intentions with her daughter, basically laying out that this is what your future looks like right now. I'm going to try my best to make sure it doesn't go to waste. But that's kind of where this family is at. Now let's dive into some whims, and really quickly, before I decided to resume with this, I thought I'd go through the relationships of all our fairies and see whose team everyone was on right now, at least. Like, how do the fairies feel? Whose sides? Are you kidding me? Hold on. Because I was gonna say, I wanted to know whose side everyone was gonna take, right? I went through all the relationships. So, the fairies who are basically on Lynette's side or support Lynette right now as heiress, as the next queen, are Sycorax and Kayla. Sycorax and Kayla, that's it. For Jadis, she's got Tinka, Titania, Vivian, Supriya, Brent, Katerina, and Bren, who all think that she would make a better queen. Yes, even Queen Supriya herself feels as though Jadis, and she's felt this since Jadis was a child, is going to be the better ruler. However, fairy succession, just like vampire succession, is kind of set in stone, right? It is absolute. There are very few situations in which you can kind of overturn that, but more or less, unless you go through the process of reckoning or judgment, succession is set in stone. So the fact that the queen doesn't like Lynette is not going to have an effect whether or not she passes a crown to Lynette. External factors are going to impact that, but it is wild to me that the queen does not even believe in her eldest daughter, believe in her crown princess. And Katerina, she had a family meeting. She was going to make sure that Lynette was kind of thrown out or killed, but basically eliminated so that she wouldn't have a problem with her daughters. But what is happening? She has wound herself up so much over this that she is actually dying from a cardiac explosion. Are you kidding me? Katerina, no! Guys, Katerina had all these plans, but she took on too much. She took on too much strain, too much stress, and she has become so overwhelmed with anger that she is dying. Oh my goodness. That was completely out of my realm of possibility in terms of how this episode was gonna go down. And Grim is too busy watching a sword fight between Kayla and Vivian. Oh my goodness. I feel for a second that I was so intrigued to find out whether or not Katerina was gonna succeed in eliminating Lynette, but she ends up dying instead, and this is so sad and so pathetic. Someone who lived such a grand life is dying next to the trash can. Are you kidding me? Oh, Katerina. Oh, Katerina. No, she's gonna become a free-roaming ghost. Oh, Katerina, giving hearts to us, making hearts at us as a ghost. Please tell me that, oh, there we go. That's where we have her grave. We are gonna have to move Katerina, guys, to the... I'm just flabbergasted. We're gonna have to move her to the crypt. Not only this, but the queen is going to have to now appoint a new counselor to take Katerina's place. I mean, we have Bren, but Katerina needs a replacement. And whoever the new counselor is going to be might also impact what the heck happens with Lynette. I don't know, because Lynette doesn't have a great relationship with everyone. Oh my goodness, let me sort that out and then we'll be right back. It was a dark day for everyone as the fairies of the court gathered to pay their respects to Lady Katerina. Her death had been so unexpected, they didn't really know what to make of it. and so soon after seeing her daughters become ladies in their own right. The fairies gathered in the noble crypt to mourn her loss, remembering the years of service she'd given to the queen. No one knew about what she'd been planning before her death, or the fears she had for her family, and her daughters wisely kept their mouths shut. They watched, silently, as Lady Brittany Perchpaw was summoned to the main court, promoted now that Katerina was no longer among them. Afterwards, the court was summoned for an emergency meeting. Lady Katerina's role on the Autumn Council couldn't be left vacant, and so the Queen appointed a new fairy for the role. To everyone's surprise, she gave the position to her favored younger daughter, Princess Jadis Reed Daisy. The result was utterly shocking, ending the long-held peace of the court and nudging the fairies towards chaos. For many, this was a sign that Lynette's time was finally over, along with the threat of her haphazard behavior. After all, by giving Jadis power, Supriya had sealed Lynette's fate. And Jadis didn't disappoint. Once her mother was done making the announcement, she stood up and in a grave voice addressed the court. She told them that one among them had committed the grave crime of hatred against a member of the Autumn Council, and without hesitation called a reckoning on her enemy, Crown Princess Lynette. The court was absolutely shaken, such a thing beyond their imagination. They'd never had need for a measure as extreme as this, but they also saw the necessity of it. Many were afraid of what sort of monarch Lynette would be with her unpredictable personality. With Jadis, their alliances would be more secure, and so they watched quietly, swallowing any objections. Really quickly, before we get into the reckoning, I want to point out that I've been making a little bit of a mistake with my influence points. I looked at the rules again, and princesses as well as dames get +1 influence point just like the noble ladies, which means I should have been taking them into account when talking about how much influence everyone had. They were not at 0. Plus, all fairies with an undecided faction also have +1 faction influence, which means that Jadis, Tinka, and Sycorax were missing points. But I fixed it all up, which is important because their votes are going to affect the outcome of the reckoning. Okay, so much is happening right now. I need to talk about this before we move on. But I didn't anticipate any of it. I'm not gonna lie. I did not anticipate any of it, guys. So basically, after Katerina died, we had a vacancy in court. So Lady Brittany Perchpaw has now joined us, even though it's pretty much the end of Supriya's reign. But a queen always has like 5 ladies within her generation. So Brittany joined us. Utha, I think, is temporarily at the female faculty since we don't need a caretaker right now. We're not in a breeding season. And then in the next generation, under the next queen, we'll have someone new assigned as the caretaker. So there's nothing to worry about on that front. But as well as this, there was a vacancy for one of the council members in the Autumn Council. And I went through, looked at all of Queen Supriya's relationships, as I usually do, to see who she had the highest friendship with, and that's who would have been chosen as the new council member. Also, it is important to note that any of the young adult fairies, regardless of which generation they're from, are eligible to be on the council. Beforehand, Jadis missed out on this because the Autumn Council was appointed a few days before her birthday, so she was a teen at that point. She would not have been able to make it. Not only that, the queen had an amazing relationship with Bran and Katerina, and I don't think it was as high as it is right now. At, I think, the end of the last episode, if I'm not mistaken, The queen, while influencing relationships, also reinforced or improved her bond with her daughter Jadis. I think we talked a little bit about the queen feeling as though Jadis is the better heir, and she was trying to cover up for Lynette's kind of shortcomings. But I think that played a huge role because she had 100% friendship with Jadis and with no one else. She didn't have 100 with anyone else. So it wasn't even a question or consideration of Jadis and who. Like, I didn't even have to look at compatibility because Jadis was the only one she had 100 with. So Jadis was made a council member. Now, this came with its own drama because I quickly realized after Jadis became council member that she and Lynette are enemies, which means as soon as Jadis joins the council, she is going to call a reckoning on Lynette, which is exactly what has happened. It is mind-blowing. Katerina essentially modded herself so that Jadis could sit on the throne, and it kind of makes sense why for a lot of people, the decision to make Jadis counselor, knowing that she's enemies with Lynette, is essentially Supriya declaring Jadis as her heir instead of Lynette. Because I mentioned this beforehand, but for the fairies, just like the vampires, it is set in stone the way their succession works. There are very few things that can basically eliminate a current heiress so that she can be replaced by someone else. And in this case, it's a reckoning, right? We thought Katerina might be the one. That was the original plan, that Katerina was supposed to be the one who was going to declare Lynette as an enemy and then call a reckoning on her. But instead, she died from anger, right? She died from how frustrated and freaked out she was and how trapped she felt and how unfair everything was. That killed her. And yet, through her death, Lynette is facing an even quicker reckoning because Jadis replaced Katerina on the council. So the queen doing this, she obviously herself isn't going to call a reckoning on her daughter. She herself isn't going to take the title of heiress away from Lynette, but by choosing Jadis as a counselor, she's given Jadis the ability to put Lynette on trial. So isn't that wild, the way all of that came about? Like, I was so surprised. And I thought it was very interesting that while Jadis was calling a reckoning on Lynette, Kayla stood up. Since Kayla was one of the two fairies in court who were actually in support of Lynette instead of Jadis. So she stood up. Sycorax was the other fairy in support of Lynette, and she has been Lynette's best friend for a while, but she did not stand up. She stayed in her seat because we also know that Sycorax is quite opportunistic. I mean, she likes sticking with powerful fairies. Yes, for a long time, she and her supremacist values really got along well with Lynette, but at the end of the day, if she had to pick between Lynette and herself, she would always pick herself. And I think she has enough smarts to observe the fact that right now, everyone is against Lynette and Jadis is rising to power. So I think she would kind of throw her weight behind Jadis, and that's why she's sitting quietly instead of standing up with Kayla and objecting against this reckoning. So now what's going to happen is that the fairies will convene over here on this table, and they are going to vote on whether they choose death or exile for Lynette. And the way that works, as a reminder, is that if a fairy has a red bar with Lynette, they're going to vote for death. If they have a green bar, they will vote for exile. And then we'll look into the influence points. So once all the fairies have voted for death or exile, I'll go through and add up how many influence points they have, because that's how much weight their vote will have. So the more powerful a fairy is, the more their death or exile vote means, or the more their vote is going to influence the overall outcome of what the court decides for Lynette. So I'm very, very intrigued to see how this is going to go, since with Vampire Amazon and Fairy Amazon, like, I built this whole judgment and reckoning system. We didn't get to see any of it in Vampire Amazon, and I thought the fairies were way too peaceful for us to see a reckoning from them, but I'm kind of excited that we finally get to play around with this. Before I continue with that, also, I do want to show you guys where we have Lady Katarina right over here. Also, I have kind of worked out how to deal with the really blurry images. Basically, the medium and large photos are the ones that have an issue with how blurry they are. If you do like a small photo and then you size it up, it seems to be a lot clearer than the bigger ones. So that's what I did here. I took a small photo and then I just sized it up. So this is where Lady Katarina's resting place is, guys. But okay, now that I've managed to cover all of those things, like, I really needed to talk about it. There was like way too much that I could not discuss with you guys before we moved on to the next stage of all of this. The fairies convened to cast their votes on Crown Princess Lynette's fate, and they were split. Crown Princess Lynette pleaded for her life with 2 influence, begging for exile. Queen Supriya voted for exile with 11 influence. Lady Bran voted for exile with 8 influence. Princess Jadis voted for death with 9 influence. Lady Brant voted for death with 10 influence. Lady Kayla voted for exile with 7 influence. Lady Brittany voted for exile with 2 influence. Lady Vivian voted for death with 9 influence. Lady Titania voted for death with 7 influence. Tinka voted for exile with 2 influence. And Sycorax, the snake she was, voted for death with 2 influence. After a long and argumentative discussion, the reckoning had its outcome. The fairy court had declared for Crown Princess Lynette Reed Daisy death. The fairies gathered at the execution circle, ready to see the end of their heiress. Her life's tale was a tragic one, fraught with poor decisions and a weak personality. She'd been born with a golden spoon and the hopes and dreams of her mother, a well-respected queen. But as a child, she squandered her resources. As a teen, she struggled to compete with her younger sister. And as a young adult, she burned all the bridges with those who supported her. The fairies sought out their nature spirits, pleading for justice and demanding their wrath. Within moments, the collective power of the nature spirits struck down from the heavens, hitting Crown Princess Lynette, and she was powerless to fight it, succumbing to her fate and what the court demanded of her. Death was a sweet embrace, taking her away from the failures of life and the legacy she could never live up to. And with that said and done, I am going to leave off here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.